Heidi Love in the house, dropping knowledge and facts, uncovering the truth, no need for acting lax. She ain't afraid to speak her mind, breaking through the lies, rising up with love, taking us to new highs. We're living in a world full of secrets and deceit, but Heidi's here to expose, bringing truth to the beast. She's got a message, spreading it far and wide, from addiction to hope. She's on the other side. Ooh, yeah.
Hello and welcome to another episode, well, almost, of the Unfiltered Rise, because today I have a collaborator, not a guest. We are going to do this show together, and this is Amy Lane, and she has a following at D Live, and she actually asked me on, and I wanted the video, so here we are together. Amy, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm so grateful that you agreed to be interviewed, and I think we'll have a lot of common interests to talk about, so I'm super excited for this.
Awesome. Yes, me too. I'm actually always excited to go on and talk with anybody, and I just like to get my story or word out and help people. So it doesn't matter to me where your podcast is, anything. Like, I think it's great. I think we all have a voice, you know?
For sure.
So
yeah.
I'm excited that you asked me, because I've never been on anything with like D Live or other like forums before. So this is cool. This is cool for me. So
yeah. And I would just like to bring a lot of different people onto D Live, different perspectives, because it's just always awesome to get new insights. And I listened to your show, I listened to you first on New York Patriot podcast. And you went into your life story and going to the temple for the first time and how it totally changed your life. And just an assortment of all kinds of interesting insights, like Joseph Smith's mother worshipped Abraxas. And
yes.
So that we'll get into that later, but I just wanted to start there. And so I just wanted to kind of let you tell your story, and I won't interrupt a lot. So you want to talk about that?
I actually, sure, of course. Yeah. And I don't mind if you do, because I'm a little bit of an interrupter because I have a little bit of ADHD. So if you have a question in the middle, I'm fine with that. I don't care.
Oh, no problem, because I'm used to it from D Live, from the panels. I literally everyone would be talking over everybody else. So I don't think it will be as bad as that.
Okay. All right. Well,
so keep going.
We are going to give you the lowdown. I am Heidi Love. Actually, that is my name. That's not really a handle. My parents were raging hippies. So, yay, parents. And I grew up in Utah for the most part. I grew up in Idaho a little bit for my earlier parts of my life, but I actually was still born in Utah. So Mormonism and Utah are hand in hand. You really can't live here if you aren't like at least affiliated with Mormonism. You'll know about it even if you live here and you're not a Mormon. So basically, I was in the church from birth until I was about 34 years old, and I wasn't extensively active when I was young. I went with neighbors and such because I was living with my mom, and we lived in Idaho with my stepdad, and my early years were kind of chaotic and crazy, and I think some people have heard this, some people haven't, but it was a pretty abusive situation for my mom. And I was a ward of the court by the time I was 12. Not because my mom didn't want to help me or anything, but just because she couldn't even help herself at that point. So she was getting better. And I went to live with my grandma. And this is where my Mormon life gets really extensive, because she was a temple devout Mormon. She'd been through, my grandpa was a Hellion, but she went through on her own, which is really rare in that day and age. Anyway, that would have been in the 90s. She went through by herself because she actually didn't think my grandpa would ever get his crap together. So he did eventually. I don't know that was a good thing now that I'm out, but hey, that's all right. He secret told me once, like, I still believe in the Trinity. I was like, because he was Catholic his whole life. So that was kind of funny. Yeah. He wasn't from here. He was from Chicago area and Oregon. So that's kind of where he was from. And she met him when they were 13 and 15 and got married and had a baby by 14, and they weren't polygamous or anything. This is just a thing sometimes that happens in Utah. So I was 17 when I got married, but I did live with my grandma from the time I was about 12 till I was 17 when I got married. And I stayed a member. I went through the temple. We got married in the temple. We took out our endowments. We took out, got married, or had our marriage sealed at that point because he wasn't a member when we first got married. So you have to wait a year. So when you go through the temple and you get your endowments and you get married for time and all eternity, you don't just get married for now. You apparently it's way above the Bible because that's totally unbiblical. The Bible says there's no marriage in heaven. So I don't know, where they pulled that from, but there's a lot of places they pulled a lot of things from. And so I got really into the church at that point, had my first 2 kids and was really active, and you wear the garments, you do all this stuff, and you're kind of consumed. At this point in my life, it's like it's a overtaking. It just does. Everything you do revolves around the church. And what you wear, what you drink. Do you drink coffee? Nope, can't drink coffee. I've been to the temple, all these crazy things. And I'll get more into the rituals when we get to that point, but like, this is just a rundown. And then, so I ended up having a divorce at some point because he ran off with a polygamous girl that was that he wasn't a polygamist. Yeah. Yeah, it was a really weird. Actually, that was probably the weirdest part. I was really pissed about the affair, but I was like, didn't know about this whole polygamous part. And my grandma actually knew. And she said, "What did you think about the polygamous part?" And I was like, "What?" And she was like, and she didn't look like one. She was probably one of the newer clans, maybe an all red clan, maybe I don't know what, but in Cedar City.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And so she did wear long sleeves and had long hair, but no makeup. But some people don't wear makeup. Like, I didn't think it was any weird. She wore normal clothes. And so when I found that out, I was just, it pretty much rocked my world because I had only ever been with my husband. Now all of a sudden you add like 6 more people to the mix because, right, like she's like the 3rd wife plus the husband plus her. It was just a lot. It was a lot in my brain, and I tried to forgive him and we tried to move on, but he kept seeing her and I kept finding out. And so that marriage ended, but not to the church. It didn't. To the church, I am still married for time and all eternity to this scumbag that won't pay his child support, take care of his kids. He went and got on meth at that point, went crazy off the rails. Yeah, he really went to a whole nother level, I would say. And so he had a history before me. He started drinking again and all this stuff, but it got really ugly and I got married again. But yeah, so my husband now, before when we were dating, he was like talking to me a little bit about the church because I was talking to him like, oh, maybe we should go back. Like, I don't know. At this point, I'm a Jack Mormon. Jack Mormons just believe in the theology, but they don't go to church. And so, I mean, once in a while, maybe Christmas, I don't know, if you get the inkering, whatever. But I just told him, I said, I think we should. And he looked at me straight in the face and he goes, okay, first watch this. And he hands me a bunch of videos and I'm like, okay, on YouTube, he highlights them all. And he says, after you watch this and you watch this Masonic ceremony, blah, 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 this stuff, then come talk to me about if you still want to go. And I watch it. I'm like freaking out. I'm like, why is this on YouTube? Who put the temple ceremony on YouTube? And then he's like, this isn't the temple ceremony. This is a Masonic ceremony. And I was like, what is a Mason? I didn't even know what a Mason was. I didn't know. And so he's like, the temple and the church and everything has nothing to do with Jesus. And my mom had already been out and she was born again and just non-denominational. And she had told me things. So those little seeds she planted my whole life kind of helped when this happened with my husband too. And it just kind of came together and I started researching on my own. He never pushed it. He just said, yeah, that's not for me. Like, he wasn't rude. Just was like, yeah, that's not happening at my house. So sorry about that. But I was like, oh, okay. Because his parents are really religious in the church, in Mormon church. And so I was actually kind of surprised. I kind of thought, oh, he's just the black sheep maybe because he wanted to drink coffee. I didn't know he was out like that. And then when I found out, then I saw this stuff. Well, I didn't really become a researcher at that time, even though I was out. and I became a born again Christian, but I was like a baby Christian. I didn't really study the Bible that much. It wasn't like, it was more like, oh, it's nice that it's there, but like, yeah, I have my life to live, type
Mhm.
thing. And it
Mhm.
wasn't that big a deal for me. And so then it became to a point where after I lost my daughter to an estrangement, she's not passed away,
Mhm.
and my brother died, and all this stuff started happening. Like my brother died, and my grandma died, and my dad died, and all these people died like within a year and a half. And like I lost all this stuff, like in the whole thing with my family and the Mormon thing, and I'm like getting kind of chucked out on any extended family. And my grandma tried to sue me after she found out I was leaving. She tried to
Oh
take my kids
wow.
away.
Mhm.
Yeah, she reported me to CPS, and in fact, she did actually win a lawsuit against me. She liked to take my kids shopping for clothes that they actually didn't need and or want, hardly ever wore, because they were kind of grandma-y clothes. Like
Mhm.
but I was like, whatever. Like when you're there and they bring home stuff, you're just like, oh, she would do this all the time. She was kind of a shopaholic, but not necessarily for herself.
Mhm.
And like bring home pets that I'm allergic to, like crazy stuff. And I'm like, no, they can't have a guinea pig. Like you spent all this money, $200 on a cage and crazy. I can't even be around hay, like all this silly stuff. So she kept receipts for all of this silly stuff. And then when I didn't do what she told me to do and go back to the church and listen to her and da 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 da, she sued me, and
Mhm.
she won because she had
Mhm.
every receipt, every known to man. And so I
Mm.
went to the courts and said, hey, even for a trip to Disneyland, which I absolutely refused to even want. And I told her, we can't afford that. Her thing was, you can pay me back. And I'm always like, no, I don't have the money to pay you back. Like, that's why I don't want this.
Mhm.
So then Christmas morning, she gave it to my kids.
Mm.
Yeah. So you don't really, and it was paid, it was like bought, it was like
Mm.
done, non
Mhm.
refundable stuff. So
Mhm.
anyway, long story short, I lost most of my family then. Then
Mhm.
when my daughter estranged because she got married to this guy, and I don't know him well. I've only met him 3 times, in all fairness, but obviously he doesn't like us. And so he took her, they moved far away, clear across the country. And I have not seen or
Mm.
heard from her in 4.5 years. She has a
Oh,
baby now.
sorry.
That's
Mhm.
okay. It helped my journey. And this is why I'm giving you this backstory, because the
Mhm.
only thing at that point that really helped me was diving into the Bible, diving into the word, trying to hear God's words, because I was really severely depressed. I
Mhm.
was just so messed up and sad. And like I said, I still was a born again Christian, but I wasn't really giving it any attention in my life. And so when I
Mhm.
started to study that, then I also wanted to know, well, if this is this way and that's that way, and well, how did the church figure this out with the stuff with Mormonism, right? Like I'm studying the
Mhm.
Bible, but at the same time I'm like, how did he come up with this? Like how did I get led so astray?
Well, and
Like how did this happen?
like you've said in your
Yeah.
podcasts, the focus of Mormonism is not on the Bible; it is on the
No.
Book of Mormon.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
yeah.
100%. And Joseph Smith. They like worship him. I
Mhm.
mean, even their
Mhm.
Jesus almost looks like him, which it's
Mm.
kind of funny. But it's a
Mhm.
very sandy blonde colored Jesus with
Mhm.
very light skin, and like a one-sided OTO robe with
Oh,
one nipple
wow.
out. Yes.
Oh,
Look up the
yes.
Christus. Yes.
Mhm.
So I started studying it because I was like, well, what was I? I was trying to get rid of attachments in my life. So I'm like, well, what did I do in there? What was it that I did? Right. Because I really didn't know what I was doing in there. So they don't tell you. They don't tell you, oh, by the way, this is a Masonic thing and this is weird and blah, blah, blah. They don't, this is not ever told to you, ever. It doesn't change when you go through. It's not like a Mason where you go to the next degree and you're going to know what you're supposed to do now and the secrets of that, or Scientology or whatever. You don't get that. They just give you the basics and that's all. And if you figure out the rest and you have a question, you might be the problem. Maybe you're the problem, right? Like
Mhm.
you shouldn't ask questions. because maybe
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to be that smart, stay home and bake some casseroles or something.
Mm-hmm. Like you talked about how you had to be absolutely perfect in all aspects of
Yes.
life,
Yes.
and that you couldn't ask questions because, like you said, if there's people searching on the internet for Freemasonry
Oh,
and
yes.
Mormonism, there's a little website, LDS website, that kind of just shoos people away, which reminds me of censorship of truth in general. It's this very similar
Yes.
story.
Well, and they did a whole campaign. So when the internet first started getting big and people started finding things out, just like me, people were like, hey, what about this stuff right here? And they're like, oh, well, don't doubt your doubts. Don't doubt your faith. This is a real slogan from the LDS church. And then they also say, just like any other cult type religion, or like Jehovah's Witnesses or anybody that wants to keep their people like very in their own center, you need to only look at information from our website. You need to only search out things on LDS.org. You need to talk to your bishop. You can't just be, wondering about all that. It's not okay. So, and especially, I'll be honest, as a woman, it's really kind of frowned upon. Okay. When I
Mm,
joke about making casseroles, I kind of sort of mean it.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I I did have a job, and I knew as a kid, with that history that I gave you with my mom, that I would never be not able to take care of myself, because my mom was unable to leave an abusive situation in her mind. Now, sure,
Mm-hmm.
she could get in her car and she could drive away, but in
Mm-hmm.
her mind, she couldn't feed her kids, and
Mm,
that is a scary place to be. And
mm-hmm.
so I kind of understand that learned helplessness. And I saw that and I went, nope, that's not going to happen, not to
Mm,
me. And
mm-hmm.
so I was big on getting an education, even though I got married at 17. That's not
Mm-hmm.
very normal. I had
Mm-hmm.
kids all throughout college. I had kid after kid after kid in college, and I still finished. And that's why I tell people there's a way. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to do it, you will do it,
Mm-hmm.
because I was 17 and I got married to a 25-year-old man,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a kid, and by all rights I shouldn't even be where I'm at, but you can do things. You can do
Oh,
anything, you know.
definitely. Yeah.
And so I did get 2 degrees, and I
Mm-hmm.
just continued my education, which wasn't normal for the Mormon women. Um,
Mm,
I wouldn't say they tell you not to go to school, but they're like, your focus is your home. Your
and
focus is your kids.
having children
Yes.
for the celestial kingdom.
Yes, and to bring down your premortal existing children. Your children already exist. They live in heaven and they're waiting for you. You're letting them down. Look at how
Ah,
you're
that's
letting
so
them
weird.
down. Your family is up there. They've chosen you as a mother. You're a mother of righteousness, of celestial kingdom. You need to bring down your children, even if you can't afford it, even if you're overwhelmed, even if you're depressed, even if
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't even matter. I've seen women in the church where clearly they should have stopped 5 kids ago.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's a wreck and nobody looks like they have shoes that fit or money to buy
Mm,
food or,
mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having baby number 9 next month,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, what is going on with this family? Like, why do they keep doing that? But then
Mm-hmm.
when you're in, because they guilt you kind of. They don't
Mm.
do it, and they're very insidious. They're very politically correct. They're very, like, if you want to meet a very politically correct church, you'll go to an LDS church. They try
Mm-hmm.
very hard not to step on toes. So they're not going to tell you, hey, you need to go have some babies and be barefoot and pregnant. They're not going to do that.
I
But they
have a
are going
question.
to, yeah,
I have a
yeah, of
question
course.
really quick about the missions. So, I think you said something like to the effect of they don't allow women to do it before the boys because they're
Yes.
pushing them to have babies first, but they won't outright say that. Can you elaborate upon that?
Yeah, of course. So now even the age is lower. They used to be 19 when they would go on their mission, but now they're 18, but not the women, unless this has changed. Now, I've been out for a minute, but it used to be that the women would have to be 21, because they
Okay.
encourage you to get married first. They want you to get
Mm-hmm.
married. And they figure if by the 21 you're not married, well, then you might be an old maid and send her off on a mission. Like, really, this is the thing. And it's so funny. Like, I remember my daughter crying when she was 25 and just saying, Mom, or no, she would have been 23. She said, Mom, I'm so sad because all my friends are married and have babies. And I said, just wait, they're all going to get divorced. They don't know who they are yet. You can't be getting married at 19. You don't have any clue who you're going to be,
Exactly.
or 17, even worse. But I mean, when you're a teenager, you might think, even as a very grown teenager, I lived a very hard life. I grew up very quickly. I took care of a lot of people. I was still not prepared for that. It's not something you're supposed to do unless like the world's ending and we need to like make people for real. Like, back in the olden days, I suppose,
It's very strange how there's this whole emphasis on birth, like having as many babies as possible, especially in the FLDS. And then also the death aspect, the baptismals of the death, the necromancy, which I want to talk to you later about cosmism, transhumanism, and how that all ties into it. But it's just very strange how it encompasses both sides. And it does remind me of Luciferianism, Crowleyism, because Luciferianism is about encompassing both sides of the extreme. So you have the priest who's the priest, but he's also the pedophile, and that kind of ideal. So I don't know. Do you have any ideas about that?
I do know this is that the key markers for Crowley is John Dee. The key markers for John Dee isn't even, he didn't come up with it on his own either. It's Al Kindi. If you study about the esoteric, it goes back and back and back. But Crowley took a lot of his stuff from Dee, and to create Thelema, he also channeled, not an angel, but he channeled Aiwass, and Aiwass told him, write the Book of the Law, and the Book of the Law became Thelema, and Thelema is a religion. And it became many other religions with John Dee. The Rosicrucians really pushed his work forward. And when he was channeling these angels, I do not ever believe, and this happened on my YouTube the other day, somebody said, I still believe in the Book of Mormon, even though I think it was channeled from an angel. And I said, then you don't believe in the Bible the same as me, because in Galatians it says, even if another angel, one of us, comes to you and says, here's another book besides the book we have, then he's a liar and you should kill him, basically. This is like a summarization of that. But I did tell her in niceness, like, I really like this person's comments, and very, very smart person on YouTube, and always appreciate their comments. And I said, I hope that doesn't offend, but anytime you bring another thing into it, it becomes dangerous, because Joseph Smith channeled angels and wrote a book, and it became a religion. And Muhammad didn't mean to channel an angel, but definitely saw Gabriel and wrote a book, and it became a religion. And Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were out in the desert and channeled things and wrote a religion. And what did all of them have at the end of it? It was a cost. It was a Faustian bargain. It either involved sex, murder, or something like polygamy.
Blood sacrifice.
Blood sacrifice. Oppression of women, and oppression of women almost every single time, because Crowley believed that the male seed and I'm sorry, your bottom was like a whole entrance into another, world, and not just a female bottom, that male were superior. And that this all comes from far back, even more with
Kenneth Anger.
Pericles.
Sorry to interject, but Kenneth Anger said specifically that Crowleyism is a solar phallic religion. And so you're absolutely correct about that.
Yes. Yeah. And they stole that
Paracelsus. Sorry, I group you.
Oh, Pericles. Yeah, so it's very Periclesian. So when you go back, nothing is new under the sun that they create. They get all this clear back in the olden days. They used to think that the sperm and the menstrual blood had a fight. Shout out One-on-One podcast. This is specifically, he spoke about this, and this is where I learned it. But they had this idea that the female menstrual blood and the male sperm would have this fight, and then whoever was stronger essence would win, and that females were actually considered a deformity because they didn't have the male essence, and that the sperm was the life essence, which we actually know now. I mean, that's not really true. You know, I mean, nothing is nothing without both things. You have nothing, you know.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so it's silly to think that it's just whoever swam the fastest, right, on the sperm. It all comes from the male sperm in that general area on sex. But now we know that, and they didn't know that then. But Pericles is the first person that this kind of came from, and these are all going way back into like old Greek stuff or old, you know, Arabic stuff. That's Al-Kindi's Arabic. You know, these are prophetic people back in the day. And I'm talking even before John Dee. Well, John Dee came along and he saw their works. Any of these people that really have the time and energy to study. John Dee only slept 4 hours a night because he devoted so much of his time to study. He read so much and studied so much that I do believe he would have literally sold his soul for the information. And I think he did. He ultimately, after he channeled what he did with the angels, there was a price eventually. Yes, yes. And what did he have to pay? He had to give up his wife. And what happened? Edward Kelly, he raised Edward Kelly's son till the rest of his life. I mean, she got impregnated from that wife swapping. And everybody kind of knew because he looked just like him. And it ended the whole thing. All of their work, 8 years of work, channeling these things. And it ruined everything. And then he died horrifically shortly after being imprisoned with Kelly, you know. And so and the angels, even when they would go to them and ask for things or say things, they were cruel. They're like, you stink. You can't come in here smelling like that. You didn't do this or that. They would stab them with fake, like, I guess, like a not seen swords, and they would come out of a book every time Kelly would try to leave. He would come back because they were torturing him, and who knows what really went on there. But I do think these things exist, and I do think you can channel them. I do. And there's tables. I mean, John Dee's work gets, if you get into Enochian channeling,
the Enochian alphabet, correct? And Crowley kind of copied that scribing style.
Yes, and Nostradamus did it as well. I mean, scrying is nothing new, but the channeling of the works, I believe the works are really important for the fall of man because of exactly what that angel said in Galatians. If another angel comes before you and shows you another book other than the one you have to be fearful, and you should never believe it. No, man, nothing. And there's warnings in there. There's also warnings about you never know if you're going to be entertaining an angel and different things like that. So he kind of warns us throughout the Bible of these things, and especially if you go into the, you know, extra canonical books, right? Like Jasher and, you know, some of the Genesis stories and Genesis 6, different things, like you'll catch little things in there where they're talking about kind of these extra beings that aren't, now they're talking about giants a lot of the time, but there's a lot of things. And, you know, the books are there for a reason, especially Enoch, you know, and the churches don't want people studying this stuff.
Oh, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. And before, can we like backtrack a little bit? Because I just wanted to really definitely touch upon when you were in the LDS, you were kind of committed, you were a good wife, and then you went to the temple. And I want you to talk about what happened there and your grandmother and what you said to her after it and how it just changed everything about your perspective and viewpoint.
So your whole life, even when you're a little girl, I remember singing the hymn, I'll go to the temple someday. I can't remember the whole words. But anyway, from the time you're like little in primary school, like 3-4 years old in nursery rhymes, they're singing to you about going to the temple. Then when you go to Young Women's, they gave me, this is a real story, a white handkerchief. Keep yourself so pure. Keep this white handkerchief. Take it with you when you go to the temple. Look at, it's like a wedding dress, but they made the handkerchief go through the girl to make it look like her wedding dress, like the sleeve and the little skirt, they folded it. And you're just so like indoctrinated, like, oh, your wedding day is going to be your best day ever because you're going to get married in the temple. You're going to do all the things you should. So, okay, my day came. I didn't get married in the temple, and no one thought I would make it because I married a Catholic, a Roman Catholic Irish boy. He was a Mick, like mix. I mean, like a Mick, like McDonald, McHenry, Mick, whatever, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they don't
Yeah.
change. Like, Irish boys are Catholic. Like this, his mom almost became a nun, you know, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is serious. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sure she still hasn't forgiven me, which I feel bad now knowing what I know. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's two sides of the same sword. Anyway, so he does get baptized and he does go through with me. And we're sitting there and you know, he's going through his side, I'm going through my side, and you get new. So first thing that happens is you go through initiatory. Initiatory is when, now they don't do it like this anymore because I went through in 1996. Now they can't do it like that because we used to get naked and we'd put a poncho on, and then this woman come in.
Whoa.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and you
Oh, I
sit in
forgot
the
that part.
poncho.
Oh my God.
The poncho is kind of like slit up both sides, and the poncho
Mm-hmm.
is like it's not covering a lot. And I'm very pregnant at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not covering a lot. And we're in a women's
Mm.
area. We're like in a dressing room. And so this woman comes in and she's like, "Oh, I'm here to do your blessing of your sinews." And I'm like, "What are you doing here? Like, you are not a priesthood holder. You can't hold the priesthood. You're a woman. Why are you here? Like, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh, we can't have men do it. Like, you're undressed." I'm like, "You're a girl. Like, you cannot hold the priesthood." And so first off, I'm sitting there thinking, this is not what I've been told my entire life, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she says, "Of course, in the temple, everything's different." And I was like, "Okay." And I was very concerned. I was opting for the dude. I was like, "Go get the guy. I will be naked for the guy. Like, I don't even care, you know, like it's fine." And I just wanted my blessings to be right, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and no. So they don't touch you in a sexual way. They touch you like here, they touch you above your belly button. That's why they go through the side to get to your belly button. And then you get your new underwear, which are the garments I'm sure most people have seen at this point. But the LDS garment, and you get those and you get to put those on. And then you get dressed in your temple clothes, which you've already bought. You know, everything's a racket, let me tell you. It was
Mm-hmm.
$150 in 1996 for me to afford the clothes to go through the temple. And you can only get them through the church.
Through the church. Exactly.
Yeah.
I learned that
Yes.
from you, and
Yes.
that blew my mind because it's not enough that they have the tithe, which is 10% of everyone's income.
Yes.
And then they own share and Coca-Cola and all these companies. And
everything.
they started
Pharmaceuticals.
They started Las Vegas with the mafia. It's like all these enterprises, they have their fingers in
They
every
are
pie.
the mafia.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are the mafia. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, this church is a brilliant church. So back then, you had to buy your temple outfit, which was $150. Now, remember, your temple garment is $35 a pair back then. I remember being so poor and not being able to afford new underwear. Okay.
It's
Because they were
terrible.
$35 a pair. And my husband, like, they kind of give you crap too if they get holes in them and stuff. He was a mechanic. He was constantly ruining them because you have to keep them white. Right. Okay. He's a diesel mechanic, man. This is impossible for me. Like, literally impossible. And I'm a nurse. So I'm trying not to get blood all over them or gross stuff there too. So, okay, we're doing our best, but like we're constantly ruining these things. You know, like it's just they're stained. They're not supposed to be stained. I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is so bad because we just can't afford to keep them nice all the time. Like we can't." So we got smart and we were like, "These are our work ones," you know, because I don't know what else you do. You know, like they're expensive, 60 something dollars for two of us to have one pair of underwear each. You have to have a new pair of underwear for every day. I mean, they are really tight up in your armpit. They're really tight in your areas. Like you cannot wear them twice. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to, but like I'm a nurse and I'm already OCD, so that was not going to happen. Yeah. And so, yes, you get that. Then you go to the next part after you're all dressed and everything, you do that. So you're going into this big room that looks like the Garden of Eden. It's all painted like the Garden of Eden. And they did a really wonderful rendition of this on the show Under the Banner of Heaven. If you watch this on Hulu, they actually nailed it spot on. If you want to see a little excerpt, they go through the temple in this show, and they did it really well. I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, almost as bad as the Sons of Anarchy, because my uncle was a biker, and I'm like, this really happens. And same thing with Hulu. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So yeah, anyway, you do that, and then you're going to go through and get your endowments. They call them endowments, and you go through this 2-hour thing. It's very long and tedious, and you do all these different promises. You learn hand signals that are just Freemasonry. We're missing like 2. You do prayer book. They go around a prayer book and they put their arms up and they're like chanting over it. Whenever somebody says, can I put your name on the LDS temple list? You can do what you want. I'm not doing that. I seen already what they do. That's just some weird stuff. They get in a circle around the book and they're chanting, raising their hands up and down.
Oh, really?
And I'm out on that one. Yeah, nope, I'm good. I remember thinking, what the hell? I think that's about the time I looked at my grandma and I said, exactly what is going on, and she's like, don't worry, you'll get used to it. And I'm supposed to remember I'm supposed to have my best day ever. I'm like really excited and I'm waiting for the good part. Like it's not happening. So, and then it comes to the part where they talk about the priesthood, and the priesthood part. Now they don't do this anymore either. They used to make us veil our faces. You wear a veil and they will say, women, please bow your heads and cover your faces, because they talk about the priesthood. And so we're not worthy to see that. So you have to veil your face. Well, they've changed that because, political correctness. It's just not, it's not going well for them because it's a very patriarchal
culture.
Yeah, exactly. And so we used to do that. And then when you get to you're going to get a new name at the very end of all this chaos. They tell you this whole story about how God created the earth and like all these other things. And you're going to get a new name because, Adam got a new name. And so you're going to go over and get your name. You get your name and you tell it to the guy behind the curtain, because he's fake angel and sentinels that you have to pass. So you're doing your handshakes and you're doing all this stuff to get past these, to get to heaven. We're trying to get to heaven. And so fake heaven. And it's a big silk curtain with the compass and square on it. You got to put your hand through the compass and square slits, and you have those on your garments, on your nipples and on your belly button and on your left knee. And so they used to cut them. They used to go through and do cuts in them, and you would go home and sew them up, hence causing the mark, because it, leaves a ripple, like from the thread. Well, now they come pre-marked because nobody wants to go through all that hassle. And plus they'd have to cut by your boob, and like, that would be weird. And so like this whole thing has changed. So now they're already pre-done, and you go to the veil and you're going to go tell your name. But first your husband goes and he tells his new name to God, and he can never tell it to me, and he can never tell it to another soul, only to God when he goes to heaven. And I tell him my name. He goes through, and then he puts his hand through for me, and he calls my name, not God. God doesn't call for me, only my husband, because I only get to go through heaven and to heaven by the grace of his priesthood, which he holds. This is why they push marriage, because they believe that women cannot hold the priesthood, and without the priesthood, you cannot go to heaven. So, I mean, I don't know what they say anymore. It used to be really kind of daunting for my grandmother, because she never got that until my grandpa was in his late 50s, early 60s. He died at 62. So he was very young. And I'll tell you, like, for a while there, she was really stressed. Like, I hope I'm going to make it through. She had done the temple stuff, but not with him. And so we get done, and then they lay it on you like, hey, you got to come back a couple times a month. You commit to go back to do this for dead people from there on out. So every time you go back through, you get given a name that you are proxy. You're the proxy. And you can do fake marriages or fake endowment sessions. Well, the endowment session messed me up so much. I never did another one. I went through and I did marriages. I would do marriages, but I just could not do the endowment session. It freaked me out. I think my grandma might have made me go one more time because she was like,
Mm-hmm.
just come on. And then I was like, okay, I'm good. Like, she's like, you're never going to remember the tokens to get to heaven because you don't do it enough. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I I was like, it's fine. Yeah, whatever. It's whatever. I'll be okay. But it was mind blowing. Really, it was weird. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that
You know what I
happened.
thought of when you talked about the temple garments? You said on the knee. And in
Yes.
astrology, the knees are ruled by Capricorn, which is Saturn. So I just,
Yeah.
everything you've talked about with the compass and the square and just how
Oh,
it's just
it's
rife with Freemasonic wizardry
oh,
kind of stuff.
absolutely, because well, and Joseph Smith went through and got his Masonic rights, and not
Mm-hmm.
even 6 it was 6 weeks later that he made this whole temple ceremony. I honestly believe this is what got him killed. And
Mm-hmm.
many people don't understand that Masons back then, and probably even now, like they have their own sects for women, like little, like it's
Mm-hmm.
something of the star, something, something, but they don't go with the men. And for him to integrate that and say, oh, we're going to let our wives in and they're going to be Masons too. And then we're going to bring in 40 other wives and they're all going to be Masons too. And now we are outnumbered by women in the church and they're all
Mm-hmm.
Masons. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think the Masons thought that was very funny. I think they were like,
Mm.
yeah, no, I think we're going to kill you.
And they were rival, right, in Nauvoo. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
in William Ramsey, you talked about how they were overtaking the law. Like they had more members
Yeah.
than the Masonic Lodge there, so that's
Yeah.
probably why they mobbed against them.
Not just that Masonic Lodge, every Masonic Lodge combined together in the next 5
Oh
states.
wow, interesting.
So they were panicking because Joseph Smith had already, the whole reason why he got arrested was because somebody was making fun of the Book of Mormon and made this book called the Book of Pukei, okay? Or I call it
Mm-hmm.
Pukei because it's funnier, but it's Pukei. And this
Mm-hmm.
guy made a satire. It's a satire, it's hilarious. And they were printing it. And he got pissed about it, so they set it on fire. Okay, so
Mm.
that's why they went and set that printing press on fire and they got arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they did that on purpose because they knew he was spunky and that he'd probably do something. And sure enough, he did. And they had already told him he couldn't be a Mason more than once. In fact, when he became a Mason, he became a top master Mason within 48 hours. That doesn't
Mm.
happen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He had
Mm-hmm.
already approached multiple Masonic lodges that said, nah, we don't want you.
Mm.
And so for him to get accepted, he had to get in good with somebody like he always did. And he was actually quite the clever tongue. But now when we get into the occult part of this, I'll go over like why I think so. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that they said he was a charmer. Like and he
Mm.
wasn't stupid. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously you can't have almost 40 wives and not be a little bit charming. Let's be real. Like he had a limp and everything. He was no good for field work. Like he had to be something, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they say he was, but I think that is very likely what got him murdered and
Mm.
martyred. He'd also been tarred and feathered. I don't think the church would be what it is today had they not killed him. I think if they had left well enough alone, this would have died out or possibly been a very small sect, right? Like a
Mm.
tiny. But
Mm-hmm.
no, because they martyred him. What happens when you martyr someone?
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
becomes everlasting. I mean, maybe Brigham Young did it because he is known as Bloody Brigham, and I don't doubt it for one hot second, because he was a nightmare. Brigham Young is a full blown killer, and he doesn't give a shit either. By the way,
Blood
um,
atonement, right?
yes, the second anointing and blood atonement go together. So I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
doing a show on second anointing pretty soon with Paranoia Radio. But I
Mm-hmm.
just did one on blood atonement. And what the thing is they say he literally has a quote that says, love your neighbor enough to kill them. And he's dead ass. Like, you guys think that this is
Mhm.
like, no. People were saying, I need to see the quote. And the quote is on my Instagram, by the way.
Mhm.
You can Google that, put in love your neighbor enough to kill them, Brigham Young, and it will come up for you. They named a college after him because he's super great. He also is part of one of the worst massacres on a bunch of pioneers that were completely innocent because they weren't worthy. And then he blamed it on the Native Americans. He wasn't a good guy. And there was,
Mhm.
there was a lot of dispute after Joseph was killed. Who should be the next one in line? And sure enough, Brigham said it was him, but there were papers saying it should have been his son. And so that's where we get the Reformed LDS Church or the RLDS Church. And also,
Mhm.
by the way, Emma was like, and son, we never
Mhm.
had polygamy and it never
Mhm.
happened. And
Mhm.
as far as I know, on my deathbed, as Emma is dying, he says, but mom, like, come on, we kind of know. And she said, as far as I know, he hath never laid with another woman. She's a
Mm.
ride or die girl, that one.
She
I
was
mean,
very against it. Yeah.
yeah, but she still supported him all the whole way. Like, she
Hmm.
actually kept a lock of his hair on her necklace until the day that she died, and also the Jupiter
Wow.
talisman.
Mhm.
She kept the Jupiter talisman, which is why we know it was his, and the church can't say, "Oh, that wasn't his," like they do the
Mm.
treasure bag, which we'll get into. But and I
Mhm.
even have photos if you want those, but we can do that too, either way.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I can yank those up because they're actually really interesting to see. I think the slides just make it so it's just almost so much better, right?
It's crazy because I in my notes I have Jupiter talisman, treasure digging seer stones, ceremonial Mars dagger. So pretty much
Yes.
everything you just talked about, and then like
Yes.
sex magic paying a price, being a theme
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes. Oh, it's a theme. All right. Here, let me get this pulled up. 1 second. Yeah, they don't hide it necessarily, but the things that they don't like, when they don't like something, what they'll do instead is they'll just say things like, "Well, that was his brother's. Silly you. That wasn't his." And then you're like, "Wait, what?" Yeah, it was.
Hmm.
Who was the treasure digger? Who was the person that was over that? No, it was Joseph.
Mhm.
Joseph was the known treasure digger, and everybody knew that. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, let me see if I can minimize us. And it's always fun to try and figure this out. Let's see here. I had it all pulled up, but can you see anything yet?
Oh
No.
yeah, I can see the Abraxas
Okay. Awesome.
sigil. Yeah.
Awesome,
Okay.
awesome. Okay,
Cool.
so this is that note that I was telling you about Lucy Mack Smith. And
Mhm.
this is where she specifically says right here, let my reader suppose this is her own handwriting.
Mhm.
Let my reader, not my reader, suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season that we stopped our labor and went at trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles or soothsaying to the neglect of all kinds of business. She's
Mm.
basically saying because Joseph Smith's family was kind of known for being, well, they said, quote unquote, lazy.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of her kind of saying back to them, no.
Wow.
Willard, yes, this is a drawing
Holy.
of what Willard Chase said happened. And his
Mm.
account, Willard Chase's account can be Googled. It is an actual affidavit in court. It is not like, oh, my neighbor said this and then da, da, da. No, 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 no. This
Mhm.
was an affidavit in court stating that they came over, they were trying to help him find treasure. They were drawing circles with a sword or a dagger. He wasn't sure. And then they had the Mars dagger, which they slit one of his black sheep, one of the fattest ones, and spilt its blood in a circle. So
Mm.
that's the kind of rendition of what he was describing. This Smith family relics, this is amazing. And the funny thing is an independent owner owns these sigils. Now, I have verified with not only New York Patriot, who was in the OTO in the past, not only him, but with a free 32nd degree Freemason, and with some other people that know some magical things, that these are protection sigils. This one on the corner at the bottom is what led me to John Dee. This is a specific calling out for a specific angel. This is called the Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah. And this used to be used for protection, especially in childbirth. They would take this circular one and put it over the mother's stomach and then go burn it. So this treasure bag is owned by a separate owner that will not sell to the church. They have kept these, and the church in turn says they were Hiram's. Okay, cool. Cool story, bro. This is the holiness. Yep. It gets very John Dee up in the house. Like,
so
if you've ever seen,
yes,
if you've ever seen it. Yep. And instead he called it Reformed Egyptian, which I will show you a side by side. And this is kind of anybody that's watching this can go back. They have specific calling out. He also was not born under the sign of Jupiter, but Jupiter was actually a sign that's used for people who want to be, number one, charismatic, number two, be attractive to other people, and number three, like exude like exuberance and or love type situation, right? Which makes complete sense, because he becomes a husband to almost 40 wives. And so this is another rendition of the Holiness to the Lord parchment. People have tried to recreate because they're so degraded, Wow. And this one looks like straight up the Baphomet. I'm sorry, it does. And it says, all of the parchments likely belong to Joseph Smith Sr. and Joseph Smith Jr., but were inherited by Hiram's family after Joseph and Hiram's death in 1844. This parchment is the property of a private collector, and these are only photographs available of them. So just so everyone knows, you can verify this yourself. I never saw any crap like this when I was a Mormon, and I surely wouldn't have been happy about worshiping somebody that was doing some Enochian callings. That's for sure. This is Joseph Smith's Jupiter talisman. Now, I want you to know that, again, on the guy that I was speaking to you about earlier, that's before John Dee, Al Kindi, he speaks often about these talismans. So this would have gone into John Dee's work, which I believe he ended up with. And I'll tell you why here in a bit. They say he's a dumb farm boy. His brother went to Dartmouth. It's a lie. That's BS. Also, his parents were very involved in Scottish stuff. His mother was the first generation to be born here. Her dad was from Scotland. So bull crap. I'm calling bull crap. So in this, they say, and John Dee was extremely inspired by this Al Kindi, that the talismans can encase not just one, but many angelic or forces, that, like how Solomon did in the ring. Do you know that story?
Yes.
About the ring. Okay. So that's what they're talking about. And so it was very well known to them. They called it the symbol Agamea, Gamaeea. And that is, it's to store astral forces in something, i.e. a talisman. So this is very well known. This isn't like, he couldn't have known this. Like, I'll tell you why I think so. But anyway, we'll go through these first. So this is indeed his talisman, and indeed was identified as by his wife, Emma, who wanted it back. He never took it off. The copy of this photo is the Mars knife with the seal of Mars on it. These seals and these daggers, these are ceremonial knives. I have verified this again with OTO members and Masons. They said this is specific, and as well in William Ramsey's show, he mentions it, that if you are into the occult, you need a knife, a dagger knife, a cup, and all these things. So you can look at it, but it's for sacrifices. It's not just some knife. Okay. It's a ceremonial dagger, including with occult and religious symbols. So I didn't make that up. Here we're scrying. Joseph looks into the hat, much as Nostradamus looked into the water in a bowl, much as John Dee couldn't do it. So he had Kelly look into something, the black mirror, obsidian mirror. This is like widely done. This is a known magical thing that people do. This is his scrying stone. And this one, the church does have, the mainstream church has this one. This was his favorite stone. There were many. This is another one. But the brown one was his. Oh, here's our underwear. Here's my undies.
Oh, yeah.
Not anymore. Oops. Just so you know.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so that's kind of a close-up on the markings. And when these wear out, you have to cut these markings out and burn them, just so you know.
What?
So before you throw them away. And there's one over the left knee as well, but you can't see it on this photo. It's just a sideways ruler, just like that one. Oh, here in this picture it shows. See it? On the right knee, I guess. Right knee, sorry. And so you have to put these on right arm first, put them in right leg first. They can never touch the floor, blah, blah, blah. There's it's a whole thing. You don't take them off unless you are going to the gym, swimming, or making new Mormons. So that's my favorite way to say that. This right here is what I was describing to you earlier. Okay. Where I said they do some weird things and they got their hands up chanting around in a circle. Okay. I'm not making it up, people. Here it is.
Oh, wow.
You can see that they are chanting. Yeah. Around that. They don't do this
like a
for
Phrygian camp or cap or something.
It was, you can also see why I was so screwed up after. Like, I was so weird. They call it the baker's hat, but these are the signs and penalties. They don't do
the apron. I mean, the apron is a dead giveaway.
Well, the apron is given to us by Satan, and I'll explain that too. But anyway, it's supposed to be fig leaves, right? And we also have a one-breasted robe. Can you kind of let me blow that back? Okay. Can you see it?
It's very Baphomet because of the one breast, you know?
Yes. And so they don't do that top one where they slit their throat anymore, but the OTO does do that, by the way. Verified. Shout out New York Patriot. Much love. So yeah, these things have been verified to me, and I'm sorry, there is no amount of anything in me that says the Book of Mormon's true after doing some of this. And Joseph Smith was the one that started these temple rites. So before Brigham Young, because a lot of people will come on, and I will be having Jacob Isbell come on and explain to me how they think Mormonism is still good, but like they throw out Brigham Young's teachings. But I'm like, what about all this? You know, I don't know yet. I haven't heard. I'm going to wait and hear his side.
It's sorry to interrupt, but it's just super bizarre. Good. Super bizarre to, whenever my Mormon family, because I've told you that my uncle married into a Mormon family, he converted. And whenever they would talk about the temple, I would think they were in like ballroom gowns, like in my mind as a Gentile or whatever.
Like it looks like a castle, yeah.
But because on the outside it looks all fanciful, but when you showed those pictures, it just looks so culty and weird and like not anything of what I anticipated.
It is definitely culty and weird, and I was with you, and I think so are most people. And then they're like, get there like I did, and they're like, what the hell is going on here? Because you think that, and then these signs and grips, we don't do two of them. We do the top one, we do the bottom one. I think we do the third one. So two of them we don't do, but I can't, it's been so long. I'm pretty sure that's right. But the bottom one we definitely do, because I'm going to give you an example. The real grip of the Master Mason, called the lion's paw, or the grip of the lion's paw. Now, what Joseph Smith did is this for us is called the true sign of the nail, or the real grip of the nail, like Jesus's nail, right? And so he just changed the names. He didn't change the signs. This is a little diagram of the Salt Lake City temple, which I believe existed far before the Mormons got here, but that's just my weird conspiracy Tartaria brain.
Oh, I agree. I agree for sure.
I'm like, as one does, right? Yeah. I've just seen too many pictures where it's almost all the way finished and they're just changing the top to look like a cathedral. It used to look very much like Solomon's temple, which makes more sense when you look and see this diagram and how it has representation of the full lunar cycle as well as all the months.
The
and it's
sun and the
very
moon, Solomon. Yeah.
all of it. Yep. And on
Mhm.
top of that, they are, as we speak, reconstructing. This is also in a super old book. I can quote this book later, but you can see the page number on the top. I buy these really old books. That's the one good thing about living in Utah, is I can
Mhm.
find really weird old books that people get rid of that are super old that they don't think are important. But boy, are they
Mm.
important for me, because they've been outlawed now.
Mhm. Oh,
I
for
have
sure.
one
Yeah.
that's called Mormon Masonry or something like that. It's great. I think
Oh,
that might have
wow.
been it. I'm gonna go back. These signs on the temple I believe
Mhm.
are being covered up as we speak. I had a
Mm.
debate with someone and they were saying, you do know they're covering them up. They're redoing the temple. I said, oh, I knew they were redoing the temple, but I did not know that. I did
Mhm.
not know that they were covering up all these signs and symbols. So they are covering up the cloud stones, the moonstones. This is from another old book, but you can find these online. They're everywhere. There used to be a straight up pentagram on
That's
the
what you
church
said.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. So this green apron, Satan's apron. So Satan, and this is what the aprons used to look like. This is Joseph Smith's Masonic apron. But my great grandma, the lady behind me, when it comes back on and you can see me, in the picture to my side is my great grandma. And I remember her telling me, well, just you think it's weird now. I had to get in the tub and be scrubbed down. I was like, what? And she goes, but she's like, these aprons suck. We used to have cool aprons. And hers was like this because she told me
Uh-huh.
about it.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of funny to me. But
Wow.
when we're in the temple, Satan's apron, currently in temple ceremonies, Satan wears a dark apron. Now, in the pictures I showed you, it looks dark in some areas, but ours are green. Okay. The patrons are green. It's a very emerald green, but also if you look up emerald green, it's kind of Satan's color. But anyway, that's beside the point. So which he says is a symbol of his powers and his priesthoods. But before the 1980s, Satan came in the temple and wore an apron with many symbols on it, including the all-seeing eye, the beehive, the skull, the crossbones, the compasses, the suns, moon, stars, etc. So he used to come in a top hat, and he used to talk about how Protestants were like bad, going to hell. It was hilarious. My grandma told me about it. So and
Wow.
then this, I'm going to zoom in and it will cut off the
Mhm.
top, but I want you to see this.
Mhm.
This is on the top, John Dee's Enochian Alphabet. And on the
Mhm.
bottom, this is an excerpt from Joseph Smith for his hieroglyphs, his Egyptian hieroglyphs that they took to have.
Wow.
Yes. And they said they tried to get it verified by this guy. And he was like, back then you had to verify that things were real. And
Mhm.
he originally did verify it. But then when he heard that they were scrying to get it, he was like, nope, take my name off that. But he kept it. And so he had these characters. And
Mhm.
so it was interesting because if you look at them and you look at
Mhm.
the Enochian alphabet, it is
I
almost a
was
dead
gonna
ringer.
say the 3, the one that looks like an M. I
Mhm.
saw that before I even watched this, like many years
Yep.
ago.
Yep.
When I
And
was
there is
studying
so
Jack,
much.
I was studying Jack Parsons. I was writing a 20-page paper about him, and
So you caught it right away.
he was tied to John Dee as well. So they're all
Oh,
connected.
yes.
It's crazy.
They all go back to John Dee. John Dee is the father of the occult, in my opinion. However, like I said, he got some of his ideas elsewhere, but
Mhm.
he's the one that brought them together, like gematria and all that. But that's a whole nother talk for a whole nother day. And this is the Book of Abraham, which is my funniest. I have not done a show on this yet. This was the only page that I used to study when I was a little girl because I was fascinated. It used to be in the Book of Mormon. And I just thought this was so cool because I thought it was actually like about the story of Isaac and the Bible and all this. And anyway, come to find out that he just bought these from some mummy salesman that was coming by. And this is a really normal manuscript for the Book of the Dead. And he bought the
Hmm.
mummies too. He bought mummies as well. And they cannot the funny part is they can't get rid of it. They can't say, "Oh, that didn't happen,"
Mhm.
because it 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 was a whole thing. If you look up the Book of Abraham, it's wild. And so it's kind of a fun road to go down, but it would take me probably 2 or 3 sessions to go through it because they kept it as like canon of the Book of Mormon for a long time. And then come to find out it was like this complete BS story. So that was humorous in every way. But I will say some fun things now.
Okay.
All right. Joseph Smith, when he was young, he went out into the woods. This is a story we get when he was 14. And he said, okay, read the Bible passage. Oh, ye who asks of knowledge, come and seek it, and you shall get your answer. Okay, so he does. Well, something weird happened to him. He was overtaken and like blacked out. And these apparitions are there when he wakes up. Well, if you know anything about Muhammad and you go back to that, guess who else used to black out and then wake up and say, guess what I saw, blah, 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 blah. And his scribes that were with him, because they were an oral people. And this is verified by Ali Siadatan. He is a teacher. He is like really into all of this in ministry. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like his stuff, but I think his stuff is called Stolen Seed. But anyway, he really has done a lot of research on this. And plus he does research on like occult stuff and other gods and things like that. He has a ministry and he did a documentary. So he was telling me about this and he said the story is almost identical. And I'm like, that is super interesting. So, okay, he gets this and then he's supposed to go get the plates. Well, when he goes, the angel says, oh, okay, you can have him next year, but you got to bring your brother. Alvin's the guy. You need to bring Alvin. And I need to take a screenshot of this, what I'm going to tell you. But so Alvin is dead by the time that happens because he died. And so they were like, what do we do? So then I guess there were such bad rumors that his father decided to take out a newspaper ad. This is real. You can look it up. That says, and I'm going to synopsis this because I can't remember word for word. We're checking on his bones. We're going to dig him up because people said we dug him up and we didn't dig him up. We would never dig him up, but we're digging him up because you guys said we dug him up. So we have to check if he's okay.
What? That's
and
bizarre.
It's the best. Oh, yeah. He ran the thing 6 times. 6. That is pre-gaming like I've never seen. That's like, okay, but somebody's going to see us digging him up. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put an ad in the paper and say, if you see us digging him up, it's okay because this is why. What? So if you know anything about other secret societies like Skull and Bones, right? What do they have? They supposedly have Geronimo's skull and bones have power in them, right?
I was just talking about that yesterday to somebody. That is so weird that you brought that up.
Yes. So guess what? They all joke that Alvin had a hand in Mormonism because they figure that's what they took from him. So took the hand to go to the angel. Can I prove that? No, they definitely dug him up though. It's in the paper and they did it themselves. Like some of this stuff they just did to themselves. Like the mom writing the thing about the House of Abrac. She wrote that. Nobody did that for her, you know, like the dad talking about digging up his kid. Okay. So we're going to get even darker. The whole story they tell us is he went and it was all benevolent and it shows it like in the middle of the day and it's like, oh, the sun is beautiful and shining and he gets the plates, right? That's not what happened. Okay, back to the guy that wrote the affidavit. His affidavit was lengthy. He speaks about these plates. He was kind of pissed that they didn't find treasure for him and then they went and found gold plates. So he wrote a very detailed account of what they did. They had to go Joseph Smith borrowed a black horse, dressed all in black on the fall equinox in the middle of the night to go get the plates. And he had just married Emma. Now, this is very, very important because when you're a scryer, and he was known as a virgin scryer, he got married. Where's the first place they went, right? They got to go get the stuff because he's not going to be a virgin pretty quick from now. So he goes there to get the plates. And there they are. And she waits with the black horse and everything in the middle of the night. Well, he goes over and gets them somehow, but he leaves. And then she gets pregnant almost 9 months to the day.
Wow.
Okay. Like she gets pregnant and they have a baby. And this baby is so severely deformed that it only lasts for moments. And not only does it only last for moments, they name it the dead brother's name. And both of
Wow.
them are the first son, both of them. So his dad's first son was sacrificed, and his first son was sacrificed. That's very odd. Very odd. And so I definitely feel there was something Faustian to that bargain. That's just me. They also talk about the salamander letters and that those are fake. I won't get into that story because it's big, but Mark Hoffman basically plagiarized a bunch of things. And so they said, oh, it was fake. And there was never a magical salamander. No, there wasn't, but there was a magical toad. And salamanders are kind of known for being more white magic, whereas a toad is not. A toad is black magic. And they said this toad punched him in the face and wouldn't let him take the plates. Like, what? And so that was real. That still is viable. But how do you get rid of a rumor? Well, you can pregame it and say, oh, there was a salamander story and this guy wrote this thing and it was all fake. Ha ha ha, it was fake, right? So it made me always wonder, did the church put him up to it and offer to pay him handsomely for that? Because I'll tell you what, if you look up what happened to Mark Hoffman after he went to prison for that, he had already been trying to blow people up apparently because he went so crazy that he was going to get caught, or did somebody help him? You know, it kind of makes you wonder. And then the one thing that happens to him in prison is he tries to OD and he lays on the floor for over 12 hours. And as a nurse in a psych hospital, I'll tell you, he's on death row. You're not walking past there at least every hour. For 12 plus hours, he laid on his right arm and it never worked again. His right arm has total extensive damage to it and he can't forge a document anymore. So you tell me how a guard walked by his cell probably at least 8 times once an hour and a shift change. Yeah, right. So they just pre-gamed that salamander story to get rid of the toad, in my opinion, because it's very occult in nature. We go right back to the occult every single time. So I don't know, you know, that's where I'm at with the occult stuff. Do you have any questions on that stuff at all? Or
Just
which way you want to?
kind of a question or comment.
Yeah.
How the church itself doesn't acknowledge this outright whatsoever. You know, until I became a conspiracy researcher was the only time I really realized, because, you know, I live really close to the border of Utah, so every time I go to Utah, the state signage is the beehive, which is a Freemasonic symbol.
Freemasonic, yep, very.
So why, like you said, they dispute it, but they can't really because the documents exist. So they just try to whitewash it over.
I think I am, and I'll say this, even with all the books that are out there, even with all the information that's out there, even everything that's out there, and you know how studious William Ramsey is, even with all of his research, and our topic was occult Mormonism, he still didn't know about those parchments. They have put those so far buried that you can't even find them unless you know where to look. You can't. Like, there's no way to find those unless you already know about them and somebody told you, or like how I found them because of that little angel sigil in the corner, which led me to John Dee, John Dee led me to that. And then it came up. So they've hid this stuff. They have enough money and enough power and enough prestige to blow all this off. And the thing about Mormons is you could tell them, when I grew up, 100% Joseph Smith was not a polygamist. He was not a polygamist, and everyone knew he was not a polygamist. Now, the church says, well, Joseph Smith was a polygamist. I mean, we know it's kind of bad, but he was sort of a polygamist. Sorry about that. Like, because why? Because we have the internet and you can search it up, you know? So they've had to do these things like this. They've had to go backward, like the Mason thing. We are not Masons. We don't even know what Masons are. Now everything's out. Well, they got a little 10-minute clip now. oh, are you curious about Mormons and Masons? And it's like by the church, like they put it out now. Everything
Well,
is always what they
it's
want to make it.
evolving. It's always evolving, and like you said, it's so convenient for them to have prophets because then they can just change doctrine on a whim or based on
Mhm.
popular opinion. Like how prior to what 1960, African Americans were not allowed because
Yep.
the Mormon doctrine
19,
claims
yeah.
they're the seed of Cain. If you have any kind of dark skin, do you want to talk
Yeah.
about
Well,
that?
and actually that what they believe. So before 1968, the Mormon church believed there's a story that you cannot find unless you're a Mormon. It actually isn't about the seed of Cain for this. The seed of Cain is for darker skinned people, but for black people, just black people. This is how the story goes. When there was the war in heaven and a third of the angels fell with Satan, they believe and said during the war, the black people didn't know what to do and they wouldn't choose a side. So we call them fence sitters. Okay. And my grandpa literally was pretty racist and he used to say they're fence sitters. He would call them fence sitters. And very few people know what that means unless you're LDS or know some LDS people. So they wouldn't choose a side. They wanted to stay like neutral and they were cursed for that and cursed with black skin because of that. And so they literally, and when, if you look up Brigham Young quotes, it says, I cannot remove the curse placed on the black man because I didn't put it there. So it will stay there until the person that put it there removes it, which would be God. So he also has many quotes. And Joseph Smith wasn't racist. So this became a thing with Brigham Young because actually Joseph Smith was an abolitionist and he was trying to bring black people into the church. So, that's another fun fact on this. And he ran for president, like all kinds of weird things. They made their own money. Like, I
I
mean,
know.
all that. Yeah, it's all weird. And so I think there were many facets of why that would have got him killed during that time, especially being an abolitionist. That's not a popular thing. It got Lincoln killed. So you add that in with the Mason part. I mean, yeah. So, but anyway, so eventually it got very not good, not popular that the black man was denied the priesthood because remember what I said, if you don't have the priesthood, you can't go to the celestial kingdom unless you're a woman and you get it through your husband. So they were literally saying you're not going to go to heaven, basically, to the best heaven, to the celestial kingdom. And so all of a sudden they were like, okay, you know what? It's the 60s. We can do it now. It's fine. We can. God said, I heard him. It's totally fine. So
And can you
they
just for the
changed.
audience, can you really quickly differentiate the whole cold drinks, caffeine
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
Because that's very insightful.
So everybody does believe that Mormons are healthy. And I think this kind of stems from maybe Muslims because they are this way. They don't do any of the like alcohol and caffeine, all that stuff.
Alcohol.
They want to, yeah. And they're careful about their health and they drink certain things. Like they're very health conscientious. Even my husband commented the other day, the UFC fighters are always good that are Muslim because they don't do all this weird stuff. They're really in good shape. They don't smoke. I don't know exactly their rules, but a lot of people think that we don't drink caffeine at all. And I say we because I was a Mormon forever, but they do. They just don't drink coffee or tea. And when I used to ask, because I'm like, well, wait, my grandma drinks enough Diet Coke to kill an elephant, a day. And they're like, oh, it's the tannic acid in that. It tans your stomach, it's what we tan leather with. But then they own Coca-Cola and there's plenty of horrible, harmful chemicals and all of that. So it can't be about health. And then the cigarettes, tobacco, I believe it was his wife because she was not quiet. Okay. I think she just simply said, I'm tired of your friends being here 2 times to 3 times a week. I'm not making coffee and tea every time they come over and they keep spitting tobacco on my floor. And it's like a Mormon joke that everyone knows that she hated that they spit tobacco on her floor. So all of a sudden, Joseph Smith was like, you know what? God said, no more of that. No more tobacco. So and that's what, and they say no illicit drugs, but that came later. But also they owned pharmaceuticals, and the cure for the thing in 2020 that will never go away, they came out and pushed every member to not only get it themselves, but to also get all of their children done. Everyone.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yep. It made me literally sick. And I just, yeah, I'm a nurse. I won't do it. And I never did it. And I will never give one. And I will quit a job before I'm required to do any of that.
Yeah, my
So,
mom is a nurse, and she was doing home health at the time, and her agency was going to force her, and she quit, and she got a much better job after that. And I had to leave Thailand because I was a teacher at the time, and I was terrified that I was going to be forced to take it against my will. And so I made the tough decision to come home, and I'm so grateful I made that decision, because now we're seeing like the consequences of it all around us, and it's terrifying.
absolutely. And, these doctors are not stupid. I'm sorry, Dr. Peter McCullough is not an idiot. Like, maybe we should listen to the people that ran this country's cardiac protocols forever, but they don't want to listen to that. So I'm grateful that me and my family, none of us, nobody, we just took a stand, and we weren't going to do it, and we never did. So.
Yeah.
And we were lucky, but I think it's interesting that they'll do that. They'll also let people be on a ton of Xanax or a ton of, other meds. Like, Utah has a horrible medication problem. My brother died of an accidental overdose. Like, we are one of the highest in the nation on suicide, depression, accidental overdoses, like prescription drug abuse. Why? Because if a doctor gives it to you, then it's okay. But don't get a tattoo. But if you get boobs, that is fine. We don't tell you what to do with your boobs. And so go ahead and do that. But don't, it's such a double standard all the way around that it's absolutely ridiculous. And most of the women, I mean, come off very Stepford wifey. And I know I was one, I mean, but that's easy for me. I'm kind of OCD, so whatever. But I'm like, for normal people though, like when you have a ton of kids or whatever, like that's almost impossible to keep up with. Like, I mean, try and keep a house clean with 6 kids. I have 6 kids, it's impossible. And you feel like you're supposed to do all that and more. Don't forget all your callings. Don't forget church isn't just on Sundays. You got to do your visiting teaching, and then you got to do your Relief Society thing, and then the kids have their things, and then it's a whole thing. And the men have their meetings, and it's like they're never home. So they have a really high divorce rate as well here, and it's probably because many of the people are pushed into marriages at a very young age. So, yeah, it's kind of sad. And I think the church has kind of backed off a tiny bit on that because they are seeing that. But who knows where that will go? Maybe they'll pray about it and get a revelation. Any other places we want to delve into?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I just remembered the Mormon Transhumanist Association, which really ties some things together for me, because I did some research on cosmism. And if you don't know what cosmism is, it kind of predated transhumanism. And it's basically the idea of bringing back the dead souls of every person that has ever existed through technology and AI. And that's what I believe that the controller's real intent is. It's not to kill us all off. It's actually to keep our consciousness somehow in a box, because they're really obsessed with that idea. And so the Transhumanist Declaration on the Mormon Transhumanist website says, we envision the possibility of broadening human potential by overcoming aging, cognitive shortcomings, involuntary suffering, and our confinement to planet Earth. And then it talks about Christian transhumanism. For many influential Christian thinkers, this mixing of religious and scientific knowledge deepens their belief and commitment to the principle of theosis. Throughout the following centuries, Christian theologians continued preaching being one with Christ and becoming God. So that is a transhumanist cosmist ideal, transcending mortality, becoming eternal in not the way you're supposed to. And So it talks about Fyodorov, the guy that started cosmism. He started cloning. So I just thought that was crazy how that website existed. I don't know if you already knew about it, but yeah. Do you want
I
to talk
didn't.
about the baptismal of the dead and like necromancy and those kind
Sure.
of
Yep.
ideals and it tying into that if you just learned about that?
No, well, so when I was young, now they'll say this is not a thing. What the Mormons tend to do is very much gaslight us if we remember things from when we were young and they like did a Mandela thing or something, right? Like they used to talk about Kolob all the time. They used to talk about man being the same as God, and God was a man just like any other, that actually Jesus was made the same as any other man by conception, by
Mm-hmm.
sex,
Mm-hmm.
and that God, this is a direct quote from Joseph Smith, 1844, God was once as we are now and is an exalted person that sits enthroned in yonder heavens. That is the great secret. And that is Joseph Smith, King Follett Sermon, 1844.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is they believe in that transhumanism to a point where we're supposed to go after we die and get our own planet, because we were supposed to, that's kind of why I drew this little, it's an AI thing, but I put this in with John Dee and all the planets because I thought it was hilarious. Anyway, so I know that we were told always that we would continue having sex. We would. This is completely not biblical. It does not say that. It says there will actually be no male or female in heaven. So, the whole reason why God got pissed at the angels for leaving and wanting to mate with women here was the mating situation. They don't need to do that. They're eternal beings. So, anyways, yes, I definitely knew they believe a lot in kind of the transhumanism aspect from old with the collab and getting your own planet and all that. I didn't know there was a whole new movement. This stuff that you sent me was wild. I was like, whoa, okay, people are going to go forward with this. And I can see the attraction of it, but it is very occult in nature. We
Mm-hmm.
are not God. We are
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to be God. We are not the same as God. It says it all over the Bible. It says all over the Bible, you will not be like me. You will not think like me. You are not like me. You are, even the angels aren't like him. He even says the Beneha Elohim are not like him because he is above them, because he is Jehovah. And so he makes clear in the Bible that he is God, and it's different
Mm-hmm.
than anything else. It's not the angels, it's not us, it's not. So if there never has been another him all over the Bible, and there never has been another instance where that has been said in the Bible, it's very not biblical. It's a cult in nature. And I'm not saying that you can't believe in it. That's fine. Like people believe in Buddhism, even that's not a cult, but they believe in ascension. There's many people that believe in ascension and ascending and all of that. But it also usually gets tied in with Lucifer because he is what? The beacon of light, right? Like the light
Mm-hmm.
bringer, the knowledge, gnosis. This goes into really Gnostic views. And so always they go forward with that ascending. And what did Lucifer want to be? The whole reason why Lucifer fell, right? If we were going to become gods, then Lucifer would have been one. There would have been no Bible, because that was what he was trying to do, was be on the same level plane as God. And what
Mm-hmm.
happened to him because of it?
Above God. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he knew he wasn't. And I don't think we can ever be. That's the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. And I'll tell you this as kind of a thought is, I have been nothing but a servant my whole life, because I'm a mother, because I'm a nurse. I have served many people. And there is joy in that, that it does, you don't have to be anything more than what you are. We are supposed to be what the best version of what we are. We're not supposed to be God. And then we figure all that out later. Like if you worry about that so much here, like the Gnostic views, I feel like that's almost more pressure, like worse, and the
Well,
Mormons do it
we're
too.
not supposed to be perfect. We learn through trial and error, and
Yeah.
this obsession with perfection and immortality. It's very Luciferian,
Hmm.
and I'm just finding that every time I do research, I find Luciferianism and Crowley is always at every
Mm-hmm.
turn, because I'm really into the whole
Yes.
Paul McCartney, Billy Shears conspiracy, and
Mm-hmm.
just many. He
Well,
was in
Crowley.
the OSS,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Crowley
so.
made it popular. Like the ideas may have been there before, but Crowley really got the attention because why? I mean, he was getting kicked
Mhm.
out of countries. Like he got kicked out of like
Mhm.
multiple countries. I mean,
Oh
so
yeah.
people are going to hear his name,
Mhm.
not as it John Dee. I mean, he did get imprisoned once, but he also was a spy. I mean, like,
Mhm.
he was the original 007 and,
Yes.
Crowley looked up to him. And so, of course, they're not going to go back that far and even further, but there is nothing new under the sun. All the Luciferians can do, or any occult nature situation, is copy. They cannot
Mhm.
create, which pisses them
Mhm.
off, but
Mhm.
they can recreate, they can repackage. Definitely, they do that. But
Mhm.
I definitely agree that it's almost frightening how much the Mormon church is obsessed with this. And not only that, they're extremely obsessed with genealogy because of the work of the
Mhm.
dead. So then we wouldn't have ancestry.com and we wouldn't have 23andMe and all these things if it wasn't for one thing. That's familysearch.org.
Mhm.
That is the Mormon churches. And then the Mormon church pours into these others. Okay. They were definitely involved and are definitely involved with searching out things like the gene of Isis. They have been definitely involved with ascension type behavior. They're definitely involved with AI. They're really obsessed with it, which is weird. Especially for a church, like if you look at the Catholics, they almost any other religion, not just the Catholics, let's go Jehovah's, any of them, they're kind of like, oh, I don't know about technology stuff. No, no, no. Mormons are first people to get the new stuff, first people on the bandwagon, first people on, Bluetooth and little things. And I'm not saying any of that. I mean, it's magic, but it's not that kind.
Mhm.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Well, like New
They're
York
they're
Patriot,
obsessed.
yeah, like New York Patriot talked about the ATIP documents, how all of the Mormons are obsessed with Skinwalker Ranch and tied to Skinwalker Ranch
Mhm.
and DARPA and all this kind of black ops,
Oh,
military high technology.
let me tell
So,
you, guess what's not even maybe 12 miles from my house is the FBI recruitment center. They
mhm,
come here, they recruit. It's a huge center. The FBI and CIA and different three-letter organizations come to Utah to recruit constantly. And guess who they love to recruit? The Mormons. Because
mm,
they are regimented,
they're
they
not on
want
drugs.
perfection. They're clean cut. They
Yeah.
don't have tattoos and stuff. They usually know another language because of their missions. Like
Mhm.
they're a high commodity. And also, and even with my grandma, I remember like them dabbling in little things like, oh, it's okay if we use a pendulum to see what baby you're going to have, a boy or a girl. That's okay. That's just a wise tale magic. Oh, it's okay to do this or that.
What? Seriously?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Wow.
And I never knew that that was
Hmm.
witchcraft. And we know things. It's a sixth sense. When I started breaking off the things off of my life, like repenting, like, oh my gosh, like I said about the masonry, but also about witchcraft or other things that I didn't even know, I was like, oh my gosh, like learning about all this stuff. It was almost overwhelming because the church is like, oh yeah, that's harmless. That's folk magic. Of course it is. That's what they called Joseph Smith stuff too, by the way. And so it's interesting to me that they're not really upset about it. Like if you went and did like, they love Halloween. They have Halloween dress up parties and stuff. Like they don't get upset about any of this stuff. And I do Halloween. It's fine. I take my kids for the candy, not dressing them up like a devil, but like it's whatever. You can choose
Mhm.
what you want. But I'm talking about full steak parties, like church parties, different things like celebrations, making stuff about it. Like they have no qualms about any of the holidays, any of that
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
And I never even knew anything like that was like necessarily quote unquote bad until I got out. Like, and then started examining some of the stuff my family was into and like, wow, oh man, I gotta have a talk with God about this too. And it's because it's so widely spread throughout their religion. I mean, they are their own masters of their own universe, really. They do believe you can achieve perfection, really, but it isn't by yourself, and you certainly can't do it if you're a woman alone, but you will go through another person. You know how it says there shouldn't be anybody between you and God? Like, you should just go to God, like, and that's why people that do priests or anything like that in any church, like, it shouldn't be that way, right? You should have that discussion with you and God, figure these things out. But they do. You, since the time you're little, you have to go repent and talk to the bishop if it's serious. Oh, you masturbated? Do you know that masturbating is next to death? You're going to murder. That's like murder. Yeah, that's murder, Heidi. I'm 13. I'm like, what? Like, okay, because that's a sin you can't take back. And sexual sin is worse than any other sin except murder and apostasy. So, and then you go in there alone, you know, and have to describe. They don't just say, okay, tell me, oh, yeah, you just did that one. Okay, that's good. Most people would be like, yeah, that's far enough. I'm good. Nope. They want to know every detail. They're writing notes, and God only knows what they're doing underneath their desk. I don't want to know. Yeah. There's also a thing, I don't know if you know about the second atonement, not atonement.
Anointment?
Yeah. Anointment.
That you were
Do
talking
you know
about
about
earlier?
that?
No.
So part of the reason why they can go to heaven, even if they do bad things, is because if you get the second anointing and you murder people or whatever, and it's reserved for the best of the best, like the top of the top, like the quorum of the 70 and the quorum of the 12 and these high up ones. If they kill someone and straight out murder them, it's okay because they've got the second anointing. And you know how I said I went through for mine, the first one, but there's a second higher one if you're good enough, only if you're good enough. And so if you're good enough, you can get that second anointing, and basically it absolves you from all sin. And you'll go to heaven no matter what. Yeah.
It's like an indulgence. Very weird.
It's elite. It's elitism at its finest. And trust me when I tell you, if you don't have a certain car or a certain this or that, you feel it. I mean, being a Mormon, even your temple bag, you're like, oh, I need a new temple bag so I can have like the Kardashian temple bag, right? Like, not really, but like that. Yeah. And everything feels that way. You feel constantly judged, and it makes you kind of an asshole because did I care about my kids' feelings so much on Sunday, or did I care that they were there in the cutest dress with the best hair? Probably the second one. I didn't really care. I wanted them to look good. I wanted it to look good. I wanted them to be perfect. I wanted to be the mom with all her shit together, even though nobody has their shit that together. I'm together right now, but trust me when I say this isn't, I look crazy sometimes, like whatever. We're all people, you know? So yeah, it just makes you feel like you have something to prove all the time. And when they're pretty high up, I feel like they think that they just can do whatever they want. So yeah, it's something else.
Cool. Well, we've been going quite some time. Do you have any
yes.
last things you want to talk about? Final thoughts?
I think we covered it pretty well, other than the FLDS stuff, which is a whole nother bag on its own, which I'd be happy to come back and do with you at some point when you're ready after, you know, you said you were researching. So I'm down for that. Not enough people know enough about it that I can just go back and forth like that. So that'd be great. But it has a lot worse, things come up.
It's like the hyperness of what you're talking, all the elements you just talked about, but like every single minute of their lives is controlled and dictated to, and solitary confinement, banishment, sexual abuse. I mean, it's the gamut of everything evil and horrifying. So
yes, that's a good one. And if people haven't seen I think they did a pretty fair job on that Stay Sweet
Oh,
documentary.
Keep Sweet,
That's a
the
Keep
Netflix.
Sweet. Yes, yes. I thought they did pretty good on for a very basic understanding. It helps people get it. I lived in St. George for a while, so I was
Mm-hmm.
right there by all of it and worked with a lot of polygamous girls and different things
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of them become nurses. And what
Hmm.
they'll do is send a few of them to work and a few of them stay home. So, money. And so that,
Mm-hmm.
they can all be
Mm-hmm.
bringing in money to the household. But it's an interesting, and I also put out a documentary on it because of the connection there with Warren Jeffs, but not very many people will speak out about that. And I do usually like tell people Isaac's Story on Amazon is my brother-in-law's book.
Okay.
And it's really good. He was actually supposed to be in line for the next prophet, and they took his kids, and he still has not had his daughter returned to him.
Mm-hmm.
She will not speak to him, and
Mm-hmm.
he got her back for a short time, and she caused so much trouble that he let her go back because they will bleed the beast to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a wild story, but I'm definitely down. But as for the
Oh.
occult nature of this, I think that people can definitely see. I don't think anything I've told you today sounds like it was benevolent. I don't think it
No.
sounds benevolent to me. And I don't think he was high. I do think he was a charlatan. But I also feel that he really did see an angel, multiple angels. He said he saw 20, upwards of 25
Mm-hmm.
dead people, apparitions, spirits, and angels, including John the Baptist and his dead brother and all this weird stuff. So, um, yeah, I think he
Mm-hmm.
really saw. But I believe in Nephilim and angels and fallen and all those things. So it's easy for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
That's so.
sure. And thank you
Yeah,
so
if
much
you're
for
in it, get
providing
out.
those.
Yes.
Thank you so much for providing those documents. I mean, that was mind bending, mind blowing. Because I'd always listen to you describe the documents, but seeing them
Right.
myself was like, oh, there's no doubt
You
within my
knew. You
mind.
knew immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw the
Mm-hmm.
Enochian. And
Mm-hmm.
when you know Enochian magic or you see the Enochian tables, especially the holiness to the Lord one with the
The
circles,
squares.
it
Mm-hmm.
it looks like the Enochian setup table, the John Dee table for the magic. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, wow. And then the alphabet too. So hopefully I
Yeah.
provided your listeners with enough information. And if you are LDS, all I encourage you to do is really search this out for yourself. Don't leave God behind because so many people become atheists when they get out. I know this pisses me off and I get it. I was lied to and I get it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I get that whole like wanting to be very angry and like, okay, screw it all. If this is everything I knew, then throw out the baby, throw out the
Mm-hmm.
bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
But God and Jesus is nothing like any religion says. Just go to your Bible, have a talk with God yourself, get to know God on your level. And you know what? You might be amazed at your life because it changed mine.
Well, my
Yeah.
listeners will definitely appreciate that message. They're behind you
Yes.
100%. And
Oh,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Heidi. You've been
Thank
an
you so
awesome
much.
guest. I guess collaboration. I don't know what I
Yes.
offered, but I love learning about this stuff. So thank you so much.
You offered amazing questions, and I thank you as well.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
All
Have
right,
a good
cool.
one.
You as well.